Welcome to Managing Long COVID-Related Fatigue webinar.
Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Paul O'Sullivan. I will be presenting part one of this webinar. I'm the long-term conditions lead at the Basildon and Brentwood VitaMinds service. My colleague, Dr. Pascale Harrison, will be presenting part two. In part one, we will look at what long COVID is and how its common symptoms tend to present. We'll particularly be looking at one of the main symptoms, which is fatigue. We will then look at the physiological, the psychological and the social impact of long COVID, along with suggested ways to best manage the initial period of recovery. So let's begin with defining what long COVID is. Now, the World Health Organization states that a period from contracting the virus to no longer testing positive for COVID is usually 2 weeks. Now, for some people, they will experience a full recovery in that time, whereas for others, they may be left with persistent symptoms. These persistent symptoms have become known as long COVID, or also known as post-COVID. There currently seems to be little correlation between the severity of a person's illness with COVID-19 and the likelihood of subsequently experiencing long COVID symptoms. Now, in terms of what long COVID is, it's just basically a delayed recovery from COVID-19, which can affect multiple physical systems. Usually, it can be recognised when recovery extends beyond 3 weeks, and in some more chronic cases, recovery can continue for several months. So here's a short film which depicts people's accounts of living with the effects of long COVID.
I thought I'd get it and I'd just bounce back, and I haven't.
When I first realised that I had COVID, actually it was much more frightening than I expected.
I didn't think I would get it as bad as I did.
I felt like I was close to death, gasping for air and not being able to catch my breath.
Having the COVID was rough and I was really ill. It was pretty shocking.
But after the first 2 or 3 weeks were over, I kind of thought that I was starting to get better. And then it was literally just bang, the symptoms came back and a whole load of new ones.
The periods of fatigue started to kick in.
A headache every single morning.
Muscle aches and pains all over my body.
I don't feel like my brain is working the same way anymore.
The chest pain in particular is as if I'd been just hit by a train.
The symptoms that I've got are pretty common with people that are suffering from long COVID.
I haven't had a day since mid-March where I felt better.
It's unknown how long I'm going to have these kind of spells of fatigue. It is massively impacting not only my life, but also the families and, you know.
I'm a nursery practitioner and haven't been able to work for 7 months now. I'm having to rest more, sleep more, and I just don't have the energy that I used to at all.
Day-to-day tasks at home are really tough. It can totally wipe me out just doing basic things.
The hangover has been far worse than going through the 2.5 weeks of feeling really rough.
What keeps me awake at night is never fully recovering.
I really hope that I go back to my normal self. Not knowing makes me feel really worried about my future.
Do not make the mistake of thinking that being young or being fit is going to stop COVID from having a long-term impact on your health.
This virus doesn't care about any of that.
We need to get back to some sense of normality, and the only way we can do that is by people looking after themselves, looking after each other and taking these precautions seriously.
If you're not going to think about yourself, at least think of the people that you care about, your nearest and dearest.
Wash your hands, wear a mask and keep your distance. It's that simple.
Now, as mentioned before, long COVID is a multi-system condition that has a broad impact on the person. That's what's mentioned in the film clip that we've just watched. Symptoms can include muscle and joint pain, cardiovascular issues, brain fog or difficulty with concentration, can impact upon memory as well. Changes in people's hair and skin, which would also include hair loss. Sensory changes such as a change or loss of taste and smell. Continued shortness of breath. Mental health issues such as maybe depression, possibly PTSD type symptoms, and also severe fatigue. Now, the graph on the left of the screen indicates how common some of the symptoms were reported by people experiencing long COVID. Approximately more than 1 in 10 people that recover initially from having COVID-19 will experience long COVID symptoms in the first month, with 2% continuing to report similar symptoms after 3 months. And although long COVID and its symptoms can be experienced very differently by different people, severe and persistent fatigue has emerged as the most common symptom that people report having. Now, you may recognise the gentleman on the right hand of your screen there. The gentleman is called Dr. Anthony Fauci. He is the US Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and he noted how prevalent chronic fatigue type symptoms are experienced and reported by people that have had COVID-19. Now, post-viral fatigue, which is often a normal part of recovery from a virus, is fatigue that people may experience once they have recovered from the initial infection. And it's basically a delayed or failure in returning to pre-viral energy levels. Whereas post-viral fatigue has been found in approximately 1 in 10 people, for those recovering from COVID-19, it has been suggested that prevalence could increase to 1/3 of people and likely to continue for some time after the viral infection has cleared. If we look at long COVID-related fatigue, we can use the analogy of a battery to better explain the experience. We use the analogy of our energy reserves being like a battery. If all that energy is used up, it can take time to recharge it. So in terms of our energy levels pre-virus, they can be seen as being quite similar to a car battery, whereas it would normally be possible to recharge that battery during certain periods, such as for us, maybe we can recharge our internal battery through periods of rest or sleep. However, now, post-virus, that supply is more like maybe 4 AAA batteries. For instance, there is energy there, but it is easily drained. And the symptoms of fatigue that someone may notice are increased periods of sleep, feeling lethargic despite these increased periods of sleep, poor concentration and energy, and also feeling unsteady while standing, particularly if standing for longer periods of time. Now, looking at the impact of long COVID through 3 factors, psychological, physiological and social, we can see that the impact on a person's well-being and quality of life can be significant. From impacting on their mental health with regards to depression, helplessness. Perhaps also some people may also experience PTSD type symptoms, particularly if they had a difficult stay while in hospital. We also noticed that physically, people may experience a lack of energy, aches and pains, sleep issues as well, as been mentioned before, with quite significant social impact. For example, these are just examples, but withdrawal from relationships. Maybe a change in feeling maybe more dependent upon different relationships, maybe need to be cared for more. It can also impact upon work, finances, different care duties, such as maybe being a carer for someone else or a parent. So as we can see through those three factors, long COVID related fatigue can have a very broad and significant impact on the person. Which then leads us to the question, so what can we do? Now, part 2 of this webinar will present helpful ideas and strategies on how to improve general recovery. Firstly, though, in this part 1, we will look at ways to encourage recovery in the initial period. It is important during this period to prioritise your recovery as much as possible. This can be difficult, and we accept that, and we recognise that, especially when there are other responsibilities to consider, such as employment, parental responsibilities, maybe being self-employed as well. However, by trying to prioritise your recovery, it's possible to reduce the long-term impact of living with long COVID. Now, the Royal College of Occupational Therapists suggests 9 areas to concentrate on to aid this initial recovery. These are self-isolate, rest, sleep, nourishment, movement, keep activity levels low, allow time, have fun, and where possible to stop work. Now, if that initial period of having COVID-19, recovering from COVID-19, involved a period of being in hospital, the likelihoods and the assumption is that the self-isolation and stopping work would probably take care of itself. Firstly, then, we will look at self-isolation, especially when recovering from home. Now, current guidance states that people should isolate for 10 days if either they have symptoms of COVID or have tested positive for COVID-19. Whereas it is 14-day isolation if someone in the same household or bubble has tested positive or has symptoms. Additionally, if contacted by test and trace, it would be important to self-isolate for 14 days. So what self-isolation would entail is the importance to remain at home. This includes not going to work, not going to school, not even going to the shops during that period of time. And where possible, try to enlist the help of friends and family, colleagues, even neighbours to assist you with buying groceries or medication. And there should be no visitors that come into the home if that's at all possible, unless that person is providing essential care to you or someone within that same household. If this is the case, it may be necessary to take risk mitigating measures, such as wearing of PPE. Now, the second area of recovery is rest, which is essential in order to recovery, not just physically, but also mentally. There are numerous methods that can aid rest, such as relaxation techniques, meditation, gentle activities that soothe the senses, like calming music or a nice warm bath, for example. And the NHS also has a very good online library of useful apps to aid mental health and relaxation, and the link there is on the bottom of that slide. The next area of recovery is sleep. People who are experiencing long COVID-related fatigue may notice a significant change in the frequency of sleep and a change in the quality of their sleep. Sleep can be improved by making subtle or also major changes to the environment where you tend to sleep. For example, to try to create a calm environment or maybe a darkened environment where you can sleep with more ease. And also to create a healthy sleep time routine. This may include avoiding certain stimulants such as caffeine, sugar, or the use of electrical devices close to the period where you would go to sleep. Nourishment is the fourth area, which highlights the importance of nutrition in repairing and energizing the body. There are several ways that we can achieve this. For example, by creating a regular routine of eating and drinking fluids. The fifth area is movements. Specifically, gentle and regular movements that will aid circulation, basic muscle conditioning and breathing. But what's important with regards to movement is to try not to overdo even the most subtle of movements, even if these movements seem easy for you to do and to achieve before becoming unwell with COVID-19. So it is important to keep these movements very simple. For example, to maybe just simply try to get up and move around your home a few times a day. Tying in with what has been covered by rest and movements already, the sixth area is to keep activity levels low. So let's consider the battery analogy that we mentioned before. Post-viral fatigue results in our energy levels not being where they were before being unwell, and each activity we will do will use up the limited energy that we tend to have. Therefore, keeping activity levels low is really important at this stage in order to conserve the little energy that is available that can be directed for use in your recovery. And the next area, which is number 7, is to allow time, and it's exactly how it states. Allow time for your own recovery. So be patient with your recovery, as each person will recover over a different period of time. So one person may recover fairly quickly, another person may take longer to recover. So don't rush it, and just allow time, be patient with your own recovery. The 8th area is to have fun. Now, this might seem like a strange thing to focus on, but it is important. Finding pleasurable activities that you can engage in will help in maintaining a positive attitude and also good mental health during this initial period, which will be important. So consider how we can remain connected with friends and family where self-isolation allows, and try to engage in and enjoy low energy activities. There's some examples on the slide there. And the final area is where possible during this initial period to try to stop work. Now, this does tie in with the recommendation which we started with, which was to prioritise your own recovery. Yet we appreciate that this may be a difficult thing to achieve. To facilitate this, it may be helpful to discuss a period of absence from work with your employer during this initial period of time, or also maybe to consider applying for additional financial supports where possible. So let's just thank you for listening. That's the end of part 1. Please do tune in for part 2, which will be presented by my dear colleague, Dr. Pascale Harrison. And thank you for watching. Thank you.